Can we have a big round of applause as they are welcoming? Yes, thank you.
This press meet is mixture of filmmakers and juries. We have very famous filmmakers across the globe like Vimukti Jayasundara from Sri Lanka, Abhinash Bikram Shah from Nepal, and Jan Urman from Israel, and along with filmmakers who were presented the film in the festival. And we have Vishakesha Chandrasekharan from Sri Lanka, with film signed or Munnal, which won Tiger Horse in Rotterdam, very recently. And we have Jitin Raj, director of Paloti 90s Kids, and we have Vijesh Mani, director of Adivasi. I welcome, and I start with juries, and later I accept questions from the audience. So this is the format of the press meet. Me and Vimukti spoke on, especially Vimukti spoke on a very interesting topic yesterday, that is the idea of transcendental cinema. It went well, and it was nearly 90 minutes session with a very good response. Vimukti discussed a lot of issues, cinematics and politics, which is related to hinges with the whole idea of transcendental cinema. But now I open, with a very important question. We are having lot of festivals across the globe, like A-tier festivals, B-tier festivals, and even C-tier festivals. Like festivals like Berlin Cannes, Venice, Locarno, and other festivals. But we are in a digital age. The social media and other forums, like if I name an example, then I can cite the example of Telegram. Telegram is bombarding the whole idea of film festivals. In a way, a lot of people who study Telegram and its modus operandi, they are saying that it's in a way democratizing the film festivals and film viewing culture across the herd or community. In a way, it is also diluting the whole spirit of film festivals. So Vimukti, what is your take on the position? We are having very interesting platforms like Telegrams. They are disseminating the whole idea and essence of film culture that can be found in festivals.
Good afternoon. First of all, let me thank you and the film festival, and of course it's very important that because I guess this would be my last during this festival last public talk. So because it's very important that I should say this, hosting such a great event, because I've been here last a couple of days. Incredible to see that enthusiasm of the people who wants to see films and to see the world cinema. They're all coming, and it's incredible film festival to have it in our part of the world. So it's important that the Kannada industry hosting this event for last 14 years and continuously, and keeping that spirit of world cinema alive. So it's, I guess that you all understand the gravity of it and how important to have it as much as open and independent has been doing it for last 14 years. It's very important that, as all my gratitude goes to Kannada film industry and it is key figures and people who are involved in this industry. Thank you so much for having such a wonderful, great event in Bangalore here. It's also important because to keep because I think in considering to other festivals happening in our region, Bangalore Film Festival is a very important film festival for art of cinema in the world. That's why lots of filmmakers have faith in your festival, so they keep submitting your films. If you see all what you see here have been submitted by the filmmakers across the globe. So they have faith in you. So please do keep that high spirit and believing in cinema in the highest level possible, because the time to come can be very complicated for all of us, as that would be the question from Pradeep asked about how do you survive as a festival when there's so much is happening around in politically and as well as in technologically advancements, things like that. Of course, we see the last couple of years, just after the pandemic, festivals struggled to open as it used to be doing its role for last many years. So technological advancement, internet and other platforms that come up and to show films. So it became a kind of a threat to film festival, and festivals start struggling with those platforms, as Netflix and so on. So they become major producers, and sometimes they ask to release a film online before the film festival. The festival is keen on their audiences as having premieres and things like that as physical events. But it's surprising, just after the pandemic, we thought that festival will die as it came up, because they started to struggle to happen, the festival. In Berlin, 2 years ago, I was in a jury, but the festival had been reduced to such a little event. Such a big film festival had become a very small event because of the pandemic. But now again, this year, we see again a boom, and people wanted to go out and experience cinema physically, because that cannot be, because when you're sitting in your chair or half asleep on your bed, on your device, or the computer or a laptop, whatever, or your phone, you may be experience cinema, but it's very, very personal. Maybe you wanted to have a chat with somebody who's next to you, and that would be a missing point. Film festival live longer, and it's important to keep that spirit of cinema, as it is giving importance to equally to all over the world, wherever it's film coming from, keep the same spirit and keep the same way, because that's important to keep alive.
Witnessing lot of socio-political crisis. I can call it as neoliberal, post-liberal, neoliberal condition that affected the whole globe, including Asia, even India and other countries. There is a rupture in society. There is a rupture in societal values and everything. And I can phrase it as there is an experience like Nepali condition. So in that particular context, how you confront Nepali context through your camera.
Thank you for the question, and thank you festival team and everyone for inviting me here. It's an honor to be here and watching all the films, 1500 films, and yeah, I had a very great time watching all those films. So for me, I always believe, this film, whatever I'm doing through films, that is somehow connected to the socio-political thing that's going on in my country. So, and being a filmmaker, I don't know, even if you don't want that in your film, it somehow comes, but very deliberately and very very knowing that whatever I am doing can at least, being a filmmaker, you have something to say about yourself, about your country, about your society, and that I really believe on saying, and perhaps that would right now, in my country, just this decade-long war just ended. New government is there, but it's kind of backward. Not just, especially talking about my country. I always feel like maybe to go like it's like in seesaw, to go front, you have to go sometimes backward, you know. So I feel like my country is going a little backward just to move, you know. So yeah, that's what's happening, and that's what I want to show to my audience and to the audience of Nepal, that yeah, it's a critical phase, but yeah, it will pass, and that's what I'm trying to do with my films. It's always like that. It's always like that, and I feel like I'm very powerful as a filmmaker, you know, because I can say things through my films, through my writing. So yeah, that's. I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Thank you. Yeah. The Sri Lankan film is concerned, especially the Sri Lankan film and non-Sri Lankan film which addresses Sri Lankan issues. If we consider those things, if you put those things in a genre, then there are a lot of varieties. For example, it may be one format. If I categorize the format of Prasanna and his very recent attempt in his film With You Without You, and it may be Vimukti's film For Second and their dissection of the masculinity and their dissection of political crisis and identity, especially Simhadi Tamil identity. Even for that matter, there is another very important format by a French filmmaker who done a film on Sri Lanka, that is Jacques Adiard. His film Deepan got Palme d'Or in I think 2014 or 15 like that, if I'm not wrong. All these formats, eventually they travel for a very interesting panacea, that is the panacea of love and understanding and mutual conversation between the communities. Can stretch a very interesting coexistence in the future, especially in the island. So I think Munnal, personally I believe, it stretches the whole idea and argumentation started by the earlier filmmakers. They're from Sri Lanka and non-Sri Lanka. So, whenever dealing with this political crisis and depicting, conveying that political crisis, especially Tamil, Simhadi, political identity is concerned. So, what's your take actually? Do you differ from the earlier filmmakers, and do you believe, love and understanding can solve the whole crisis in the island?
Thank you. I think it's a very difficult question to answer, particularly being on the same panel with eminent filmmakers, including Vimukti. But first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this festival, and being here is wonderful. To be honest, I do not necessarily try to position myself in a particular spectrum of filmmakers or the genres, so to speak. It may happen in your mind and others' mind, or when I look back at my own career, I might see that. But when I initiate a movie making process, I don't necessarily think about where this should be positioned in terms of the other filmmakers and the legacy that they left behind. But having said that, it needs to be positioned on the discourse that they have created, political discourse. So some have gone somewhere and left it there. For example, we are talking about Tamil films in Sri Lanka. So it's Sri Lankan Tamil films is a genre, I guess, in the category. And in that category, we have a handful of films, very few. It goes back to Honmani, made by a Sinhalese filmmaker, followed by a couple more other films. And then what is next, and where should we be heading next? And I think for a filmmaker of my generation, we can't forget the war. We lived and we were born to the war. Actually, the war started after I was born. And we lived through that, and we still see the impact of it. and it is quite unfair for those who are seeking justice in Sri Lanka after being affected by the war, for us to not talk about the war. We have to make films about the war, because this discussion is not ended. This is not finished, and the war hasn't ended in the mind of the people. Although with weapons and everything, it has been ended. So I think from where other filmmakers have come, I mean, I wouldn't say that they have stopped, because they will keep making films. So I have the onus of continuing the legacy of the political discourse. And then you might ask, what do we want to talk about in terms of political discourse? I think the most important thing that we need to discuss the question that we have to ask is, why has it happened? Why did we have to live through a 30 years long war? Why did we have to endure two insurrections in the south and one 30-year-long war in the north and east? And have we made sure that it is not going to be repeated? So I think as filmmakers, our main responsibility is to keep having that discussion and continuing, and then handing over the baton for the next generation of filmmakers to continue that discourse. Because it's a huge crisis, and we are likely to re-enter that crisis if we don't address that. I'll leave it there.
Live in Israel, but they live outside the Israel, and it's like Iranian filmmakers who confront system, and they are very much critical of political system. They always used to be there in the native, but they migrate to other country, maybe France or some European country. But as far as Don Ullman's films are concerned, they are little moderate. Moderate in the sense, in a middle path. It can be called as, kind of a very interesting feature of democracy, that is discursive deliberation, discursive negotiation. So always, Don Ullman always places, his ideation and visual portrayal in a very liberal space. That's why an Israeli audience and even non-Israeli audience very easily can negotiate with Don Ullman. So, in a very strong, severe, position taking, contexts, how you achieve this moderate, middle path kind of filmmaking? So, is it a political position or is it a compulsion? That is my question.
I hope technically it's okay that I speak like this without a microphone, because they've attached me to some machine. Okay. Again, I want to thank, the Bangalore Film Festival and the audiences, and I've been here many times at retrospectives here. I'm a friend of the people of India, and obviously very involved in it's the people, the culture, and I felt very uncomfortable about Mr. Lapid's comments on the stage. I think it was a proper thing to say among the jury when they were discussing it, but to say it on the stage like that, I thought was not right. And I admire him. I think he's very talented, but this has, again, nothing to do with this particular session. First of all, many of my films have nothing to do with politics. I see myself as a storyteller. My first film, The Dreamer, dealt with a young man who has problems, who was working in an old age home, and he befriends an old woman. And the whole film, it was, in Cannes competition, and then my second film was again about an old a couple who loses their grandchildren and their son in an accident, and the old man is looking for a young wife with whom he could have a child, somebody to carry on his name. So it's a tragedy for the woman's son. And then I made Hide and Seek, which was in Berlin. Floch was in Venice, and that dealt with a gay couple, an Arab and an Israeli. And it was the first film on that subject. So I'm saying it reflects politics, but indirectly. And I think it has to do with the personalities, because we are now in Israel, every year they make 40 films about. And, there are different, the harsh right-wingers, left-wingers, and so on. And some people just make little stories, and some are very, poetic, visual, beautiful films. And, and some are very, propaganda films almost. So I think it has to do with personality. This film that I have here is more political, but it does bring both sides. It does, in the author of the novel, Amos Oz, very famous novel, I'm closing with some sort of a, I made a film based on his novel My Michael, which was made the film was made in 1974, released in 1975, and now just, I made the film that was, I just, presented here, based on the writing, on this writing. And he, because he was so humane, and he said, listen, the Palestinians, the Arabs, they deserve a state. We are like twins. We cannot live one and the other one will not live. We have to live together, and they deserve a state, etc. And then, people from, one political side said, he's a traitor. So the film is really dedicated to see what is a traitor. Sometimes diplomats, heads of parliament, say when somebody doesn't agree with you, even if he's with you in the same group, say he's a traitor, he's a betrayer. So the film, really examines the question of betrayals and what it is. And so the film has, both sides. It's very interesting. And those people who say, listen, we should be suspicious, they will attack us, they will kill us, and the others will say, no, we can't be afraid, we have to give them a hand. And you're right, that there is something in me which is a little bit more, I think, complex, but, I compliment myself, I'm wonderful. Thank you.
How you pick the content and how you little along with making also, because it's a very brilliant film, somewhat different from your other films also. So how the ideation of the film came to mind?
Good afternoon to all. I'm very glad to be here in this prestigious 14th Bangalore International Film Festival, and it's a great opportunity to share a space with these great filmmakers, because it's my Pallotti 90s Kids is my first film, and this is my first film festival. And yesterday there was a screening of my film, and we got amazing audience response. Actually, Pallotti means it's a sweet candy. Pallotti is all about friendship and childhood memories. It's a story of two boys, and the story is developed by from my life also, because the main plot in the Pallotti is unconditional bond of love and sacrifice, and only thing that we aim that after watching the film, everyone should remember one of his childhood friend. And I think yesterday we have got lots of comments and audience responses, because at that time we know that Pallotti has no language boundary. And I am once again I would like to thank each and every one of this Bangalore International Festival to invite us. And one more thing, my film is presented by India's finest director Lijojo Spellisheri, and my film is produced by CP Film Production, and producers are Sajdia here and Nidhin Radhakrishnan. And thank you once again, thank you so much. I started my career with making short films, and in 2017 I did a short film named Pallotti, the same name. And after watching that short film, my producer called me to do a film, because it's a universally thought, global thought in that, because friendship, in everywhere there is friendship. So at that time, my producer called me to do a short film. Then I always believe that film is a teamwork, and I made a group of a collective group to do two more short films in 2018 and 2019, and after that I did this film.
One, if I mention, he has a Guinness record, no, Vijesh? Yeah, he has a Guinness record for for the speedy finish of a film. That is in 38 yeah, 51 hours. Yeah, and along with he has very interesting features in filmography that he had made a film in Sanskrit, and he had film in a lot of very small languages that cannot be called as dialect, because the dialect is little derogatory. So if I call it as community language, small language. For example, this film is made in Murugan, one of the unique language that is spoken by very few people across Kerala. His other films also are made in very small languages, and kind of reflection of small communities. Now, which is why you venture always to kind of programs and projects. What are the reasons why you taking all these kind of very unique projects?
Good afternoon, and first of all, thank you, Bangalore International Film Festival and film donors. It's going on at the Mathu, our Kerala tribal man is Mathu is very last 4 years before some murder one group of uncles. That is my subject. Adivasi. Yesterday's screenplay is name of the movie, and it's very high performance.
Films has been produced by Israeli Film Fund, including Nadav Liki's Lapid's films. Now he is very much critical of Israeli system, but Israeli system supports him. For me, for a cinephile like me, it seems very much strange. Yeah, I don't understand this mechanism. Even I remember once you told that Israel as a system, political system, never involves anybody, any artist, creative liberty. So how it is possible? But in lot of Asian countries, it is not possible. State always restricts an artist creative liberty.
Oh, in Israel now, there are big demonstrations. The country is really torn too, because people are afraid that these days are gone. These days when there is a freedom, anybody can write in the newspaper anything, he feels like, and people can make films which are very critical of the government or certain politicians. And there is a big fear that it will change now because of the new government. And there is a big struggle now, and I don't know what's, I think there are also the Israeli artists are fearful because we think, we are afraid that, again, the little money, because Israel is a very small country, population of 9 people, it's very difficult for producers, filmmakers to make back the money that they invested in the film in their own country. So there are film funds, and obviously we are afraid that suddenly the little money that they give will be channeled to, other projects which are, will be, very political, propagandish. So till now, I must say that it's very democratic, and it did give money to very critical films, like critical film directors, like Nadav Lapid, for example.
Myanmar are in minorities and lot of minority communities in Sri Lanka. They're facing the same thing. What is your take on that, especially addressing and especially treating the whole content of Malayalam?
I think there were a lot of religious underpinnings in the movie, and there were a lot of rituals, and that should not be seen as some sort of a critical analysis of that whole interference of religion into the political life. The reason I'm saying that is I think my belief is that Hinduism had a little impact on the war of the Tamil Tigers in comparison to the Buddhism impacted on the war of the government military. And Buddhism, a certain aspect of Buddhist institutes did sponsor the war. That's what I have seen. Having said that, the Hinduism operated in a very different way. In the north and east, it's basically Christianity and Hinduism. And if you really dive into the deep, you will see how religious ideas were appropriated. For example, creating the concept of martyr. Of course, in this film we don't go into talk about that in details. I have talked about that elsewhere in research and so on. And so I really can't comment in relation to the film on that. But I think the issue in Manal film, what you may notice is there is a vacuum after the defeat of the war, and after the Tamil Tigers lost the war. I think who looked up to Tamil Tigers, a lot of the Tamils, had a huge vacuum in their political heart as well as in the society. Who is going to fill that vacuum? Once upon a time, Tamil Tigers dominated the social, political life and certain aspect of spiritual life as well, bringing this concept of martyr and everything. And now suddenly there is a huge vacuum, and I think that vacuum was refilled by the gods, and that's what happened. That's my personal observation. And that's why all these men who used to carry weapons and fought war, men and women, I guess, have to turn into something, and there is this kind of revival of religious interest in the society, and then, but also we have noted in the film, of course we can't talk everything in a film, is that goes to a certain extent of combining that with the nationalistic agenda. And there are a lot of religious conflict in the north and east between the Muslims, Hindus and the Christians. And of course in the entire country there is a conflict between the Buddhist and non-Buddhist. And during the war, the Buddhist ideas and institutions were appropriated, or I would say misappropriated, to sponsor the war, and it could be something seen as Buddhist monks go and bless the weapons and the military, or it could be even a greater deal of developing ideas, such as if you fight for the motherland, you will find the eternal peace, or nirvana and things like that. There are songs written like that, and there was that's how they constructed the literature. So there is a very strong link between our war and the religion. I think what we discuss in Manal is much more subtle than that, and it is partially filling that gap, as well as everything is failed. So you just have a faith in the state, and the state has failed. And then you have a faith in rebellion because you want to defeat that state, and then you put your everything behind a rebellion, and that rebellion is failed. And then who is to look up to? They look up to God, and they return to the God. But of course, when you see the film, you will just find the answer to the question whether the God has failed or not. so I think that's in nutshell I can talk, say, in relation to Manal.
Which influenced, your being a literature background, a theatre, what was the reason, which made you as a very serious filmmaker, definitely?
Thank you, Pradeep sir, for the question. I don't know much about what's going on in Kerala. Well, but while I'm starting, yeah, there were quite less, the kind of before during my childhood, it's all Bollywood films because we in Nepal we understand Hindi and Bollywood films, Bollywood, and later came the star movies and then the Hollywood, and so Bollywood and Hollywood films are really there. And later in 2000, that time I was working in a government office, and there I met a filmmaker from Mexico. I forgot his name, but he suggested few films to watch from his country. And the first foreign film I watched was Amorous Spiros, and that that really blew my mind. The kind of films that I was seeing was the all masala Bollywood films and then Hollywood films, and suddenly this kind of films hooked me, and then the craving goes on, and I've watched so many international films apart from this Hollywood and Bollywood. So yeah, and slowly I during that time in 2000 there was very less film festival, and there was no film school actually. But later, I found some filmmakers in Nepal who have same interest in films, and later, the Indian film maker, that who inspired me so much. Even today, I watched his films. This is of course Satyajit Ray's film. So, yeah, his film inspired me, and actually there was retrospective of Ray's film during 2009-10. There I watched his films, and I made some other filmmakers friend from Nepal there who have same taste. So then we created a kind of group, and we help each other, to make these films, starting from short films. Actually, we have this. We still actually Bimukti knows we are very little, there while starting, but now it's huge. We have so many schools, we have so many film festivals that shows this international films, and most of the and the filmmakers, their film goes to Berlin, Venice, Locarno, Sundance, major film festival. They win there, so it's growing there. It's growing actually. So yeah, while I was starting, it wasn't quite there, but now it's getting bigger and bigger, and yeah, it's now more into our kind of film we are searching, like Vimukti sir. Yeah, when I met Vimukti sir in 2016, I couldn't believe that. Oh my God, I'm meeting. It was lovely. I mean, his film, all the Nepalese filmmakers, like me, knows, and everyone praises as well. Even he came to Nepal and did a masterclass, 3-day masterclass. It was kind of really lovely. So you want to say something about it?
From France and Europe, but you're dealing your content and narrative in Sri Lanka. So how you achieved the compatibility? That's my question.
Well, thank you for the question. Well, I don't. Well, it's interesting that you see a connection with my films and French cinema and so, but I don't think the French people do that, and they still think it's a very alien sort of a strange sort of a filmmaking. And the good thing is that the French has a tradition, because they, of course, of cinema has started by themselves. Of course, they had a great deal about it. So because they do recognize something strange, something new, something that they're trying out. Of course, maybe going to France and studying in France about cinema had led me into looking something different. Perhaps what I was experiencing cinema back home or elsewhere while studying here had changed my perception towards the cinema, and it gave me a freedom to look something different. Perhaps that was a French effect in me. There's a freedom, let's say, not believing in one format or a formula, but leaving it alone and keeping aside everything and just moving, taking a risk and moving just with the camera and going with a very fundamental aspect of cinema in that direction. So I think because now I realize, maybe my purpose of making films back then as a student are different, and today, as I'm speaking today, I have to speak for today, right? Back then, of course, coming from Sri Lanka, from an island country, of course, there's something that kind of misunderstanding about the world, and wanted to connect to the world and want to know about the world, and so on. So, of course, I traveled, first coming into to India, and then after that going to Europe. Of course, I had this idea of becoming an artist and becoming a filmmaker, and so on. So, but now I think it's more about freedom and not being enslaved for any format, any sort of a dogma or anything that so had been, conditioning your life. So I think definitely, even today, when I make films, and my great supports actually come from France and their support system, because they do recognize something, freedom in art, and not on the content wise, but also from the structure wise, level of experiment that you can do with cinema. It's very much open, and that would be the French effects that I have, if I have any.
It's very interesting. I think Don is 81.
Yes.
81. Yeah, Don is the age of 81. He has just finished a film. Yeah, he has just finished post-production is done, and he's looking for producer for the next film. So this is the spirit of filmmakers and film. I think he's inspiring everybody, every generation. So that's why it's very, very important.
ಹಲವಾರು ಹೊಸ ಪ್ರಯೋಗಗಳನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ನಿರ್ದೇಶಕರು, ನಿರ್ಮಾಪಕರು ಮತ್ತು ಎಲ್ಲ ಟೆಕ್ನಿಷಿಯನ್ ಸಂಬಂಧಪಟ್ಟ ವಿಷಯಗಳು ಇವತ್ತು ಪ್ರದರ್ಶನ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಒಂದು ವಿನೂತನ ಪ್ರದರ್ಶನವನ್ನು ಈ ಸರಿ ನಾವು ಕಾಣ್ಬೋದು. ಒಳ್ಳೊಳ್ಳೆ ಸಿನಿಮಾಗಳು ಬಂದಿದೆ. ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಬಂದು ನಮ್ಮ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು 14ನೇ ಅಂತಾರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ನೋಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹಾರೈಸ್ತೀನಿ. ಶುಭವಾಗಲಿ.